we're just going to start. This morning is really promising to offer some really unique and different look at social inclusion. So I'm thrilled to have some wonderful presenters in the room, and we'll formally orientate you to them in just a little minute. And just to do our regular introduction, you're here just to make sure that you're in the right room this morning. You're with British Columbia Advanced Practice. We really like to talk about recovery-oriented practices and evidence-based practices and best practices. We truly love to hear from you and to hear what you're doing so that we can advance our work together. Your team, as you know, as always, is Dr. John Higginbottom. So this idea was really his. This project was funded by the Ministry of Health here in British Columbia. We're very grateful to them for our initial funding. Regina, that's myself. You've heard from me many, many times. And then in the background, you'll hear Manny. She's just step. So Manny's always in the background, just making sure that all of our technology is working, as is Jordan. So he's the gentleman who just set up our whole platform. So we're very grateful to him. And on the right of that picture, you'll see Jen. So Jen, I'm going to pass it over to Jen in just a moment. And Jen, again, has just some great technical skills and obviously some great content skills as well, just around health and wellness. So very grateful to have our team with us. We would not be here without them. And of course, very grateful to you for coming to be with us this morning, because, you know, really, it's no fun to chat with yourself. So it's much more fun when you're there online with us. So as I mentioned, BC Advanced Practice is funded by the Ministry of Health, and the idea is to prevent leadership, education and guidance to the mental health field to develop and put effective evidence-based psychosocial rehabilitation practices into place. Very, very grateful for our presenters, because, you know, in truth, they do this all off the side of their desks. It's a volunteer role, so we're really appreciative to them for their expertise and the commitment they give to us in terms of their time and support and learning. And yeah, really thank you. You'll remember that we have about 46 archived webinars at this point. So if there's a topic of interest, please go into that psyrehab.ca website. Maybe it's a chance for you and your team to, you know, have a discussion about one of those topics and further learning, and just maybe it prompts you to think about some of the great things that you're doing in work, because I know you are doing wonderful things. And maybe it's an opportunity for you to share with us some of the work that you're doing. So please let us know if you anytime you might like to present. We would love to hear from you. So we talked a little bit about the purpose, you know about that, but really I do want to say that after this session, you will get an email that will ask you for feedback and will ask you if you're interested in participating. Please do let us know, and maybe just email myself or Jen or Manny if you're interested in doing a presentation. But your time spent doing that evaluation is really valuable to us. We thank you. And I'm going to just pass it over to Jen.
We're transitioning to a new system right now. So you may have noticed that your emails have changed. So we are asking that you please sign up through, if you go, actually, I'll include a link on here. And if you're not already signed up on our newsletter list, it would be great if you did that today. Also, we really appreciate if you share the new email list with your colleagues. So when you get an email from us, it would be fantastic if you felt comfortable sharing it with your teams, because that will help us to generate our following so that more people can hear about the webinars that we're putting on. So, and then the other thing to take note is we are using MailChimp, and sometimes MailChimp emails end up in your promotions folder or a spam folder. So if you haven't heard from us for a little while, check your spam folder or your promotions folder and see if it's in there. And if it is, then it would be helpful to include us as a contact, and then hopefully our emails will show up right in your inbox. But it's these little bugs that we're working out as we're transitioning to our new system. We have an upcoming webinar coming up in February 23rd, and it's on the topic of leadership. And you may have noticed that the new competencies have a new domain that's all about leadership. So that's going to be the topic of that webinar. And we have Anthony Neptune, who's the Rehabilitation and Recovery Coordinator or Manager for Fraser Health. And he's going to be sharing with us some of his philosophies on leadership, how he integrates the core competencies into his work. And it is going to be amazing. So you'll want to be here and you want to share that with your colleagues too, because they'll be, he's really going to make sure that you're left with some ideas on how you can bring leadership to your organization. So you'll want to check that one out. I also wanted to let you know about an upcoming opportunity with PSR Canada. We are launching a self-nourishment challenge for practitioners. So you'll notice on the core competencies B3 and B4, it's all about self-care, and it's all about making sure that we take care of ourselves as practitioners, and we're constantly learning. So we wanted to put something out for all of you out there who are doing this work, and it's all about you for this 4 weeks, and it's going to be an online challenge. So you will get an email or 2 or 3 emails a week and a workbook. So you'll have some opportunities to work through some great things and just focus on your own well-being. We're going to talk about things like self-compassion, priorities. We're going to talk about some things to do with RAP. So if you're not familiar with RAP, you'll get to work through a little bit of that. And appreciative living and working with triggers and stress. So it's going to be really good. And I would encourage you to maybe work on it together as a team, like have a few people sign up, and then you can talk about it at staff meetings or create a little group where you get together and talk about it. But it's really all about just focusing on your wellness, and perhaps there'll even be something that you can share with the people you work with. So today we are very excited to have Amanda and Maya here. The topic is Imagining Inclusion Research Project. And I've read a little bit about what they did on their website, and it's fascinating, and I've never actually heard anything like it before. So if you haven't had a chance to look on their website, just Google Imagining Inclusion Vancouver and you will find it, and there's lots of great things on there. So give it a look. So we're pleased to have Amanda Berg here. Amanda is a part of the project as a peer researcher. She was diagnosed with a mental illness over 20 years ago and has been working as a peer support worker, a wellness recovery action plan facilitator, and a peer researcher with a Photovoice research project at Open Door Group since 2013. So we're really pleased to have Amanda here. And we also have Maya Alonso, and she's the project co-lead, and she's been working in mental health promotion for 10 years. She's passionate about addressing stigma, raising awareness, and promoting health and wellness and community inclusion for and with individuals living with a mental health condition. So thank you, Maya and Amanda. Right, so I'll pass it back to you, Regina.
It's great, Jen. Thank you very much. So we'll just pull up the main slides, and I'm just going to chat through that transition, and then we're going to start with Amanda. So over to Amanda, and I'm also just going to turn on the camera, and here we go. Okay, all right, Amanda.
Hi, everybody. Oh, there I am. Okay, this way. Okay. Yeah, so this presentation is called Creating Upstream Change to Address Mental Health Inequities. And the session goals, I'll forward the slide, maybe, don't know what I'm doing. Okay, here we go. So we want to present to you information so you can get a general understanding of the Imagining Inclusion research project, including concepts of like what community peer or community-based research is, who peer researchers are and what they do, co-learning, peer participation, and health promotion. And then the second goal is to learn about 2 upstream interventions that can encourage individuals to identify, articulate, and represent their social realities. So we did this through Photovoice, taking photos with narrative, and a speaker series of public speaking. And then we're going to demonstrate, the third goal is to demonstrate an understanding of the impact of upstream interventions in addressing stigma. And the fourth one is to learn about the role of a peer researcher. That's what I am, or what I do. I'll pass it to Maya, I think.
Okay, yeah, thanks again to PSR for having us here today. We're excited to share a little bit about our project and some of the upcoming things happening as well, and hopefully provide you with some resources that you can take into your practice as well. So in order to tell you a bit about what we're doing currently, we wanted to start from the beginning. So this project started in 2013. And it was at a time, I should give you a little bit of context. I work in Vancouver, BC. I see that there's some people from across the country, which is awesome. And I work in a program called Thrive, which is a community-based mental health rehabilitation program. And we're funded by the local health authority here in Vancouver. And in Vancouver, at the time there was a push and a transition to move people out of the mental health system and into the community, which is ultimately our goal and our ideal. But it begged a question for us in terms of what does community look like for people, and what does that mean? And how can we best support people in making and in living a healthy life in their own communities? So we wanted to really get a sense of what people were, how they identified community health and well-being. So we reached out to Douglas College initially. Currently, in our current research project, we're additionally connected to York University, but in this first, back in 2013, we reached out to Douglas College, specifically the Therapeutic Recreation Department, and we together applied for a grant. It's called the Health and Medical Education Research Grant through the Vancouver Foundation, and one of the key pieces of that grant and criteria is that it's truly a partnership between a community agency or a health program and the college. They want to see that there's a true, genuine collaboration, and that it's not an academic institution imposing their research. So that was it was a wonderful process to go through, and the Vancouver Foundation has been very generous. We're very grateful for the funding. So part of the research goals and part of the process we went through, this was considered a community-based participatory research project, and in that we have a strong commitment to capacity building for everyone, and we'll get into that as we move through the slides. It's as the title suggests, very participatory, and it's very much built around social action as an outcome and co-learning. So participation, we use different methods and approaches to research that facilitate community engagement. So more towards the knowledge translation end of things, but engaging participants beyond just the data collection. And you'll see that as we go through the slides. We also, in community-based participatory research, there's a strong commitment to challenging the traditional power dynamics in research, and truly creating a voice for the people that were involving in the research, the participants of the research. So in this case, we'll get into it in a few slides, there was a lot of different opportunities for community engagement, which is what was so exciting about this project. So the purpose, as I mentioned, was our two key questions was to explore how individuals living with mental illness experience community inclusion, health and well-being, and then two, to build the capacity of service providers, researchers, students, and individuals living with mental illness while engaged in a community-based participatory research process.
Yeah, so this is kind of an image of our research team. So we have project co-leads at Douglas and York University now, a project manager who also does facilitation and is in the nitty-gritty of things. And then we have peer researchers, so that's me. And in 2013, we had two. So me and Nicola Durity Marin. And we kind of designed the curriculum for the Photovoice and chose some computer programs to analyze data in vivo. And we did a lot of research and reading and came up with a 10-week curriculum as peer researchers that we involved the Photovoice participants with. And then there were research assistants as well from Douglas College who were involved in either the therapeutic recreation program or we have another guy who goes to Adler University and does like organizational psychology or something. I forget. Anyway, sorry, Graham. But yeah, he's like the organizational guy. And then we have mental health service providers. So that could be like occupational therapists at Thrive. That could be like Maya. That could be like the mental health team people, like mental health workers, and then we had research participants and we had peer leaders. So sometimes the research participants kind of took on a leadership role in some of the subtasks that we did. And so they found places for exhibits, or they found free printing places, or they designed things, posters and stuff like that. So they kind of took on responsibilities in the projects and they did stuff on their own. And then we have the academic and community advisory committee. That's like the ethic board and people at different universities and different community organizations that helped us to direct the study and the focus and were good advisors for us to talk to if we had issues or questions and stuff like that. So that's what our team looked like.
We were lucky to have Regina Casey on our advisory committee, actually. So it was important for us. We met twice a year with our advisory committee to give them an update and then to help give us that outside perspective, because when you're in a research project, you're so deeply embedded in it. So it was nice to have that wide angle view from other key people.
Yeah, so we had two project co-leads, Anya Landy and Maya.
The co-leads are Colleen Reed.
Colleen
Reed from Douglas College, and myself representing one from the academic institution, which was Colleen from Douglas College, and then myself from Open Door Group.
Right.
And now additionally we have Marina Moreau from York University in the new project, which we'll touch on it towards the end of the presentation.
yeah, and then so we had 8 students involved and like 32 research participants, which is a good number.
That's a
It's
very large number, yeah.
a great sample size. And then, so the next slide is about 32.
Oh, sorry.
There's a arrow.
This slide isn't coming up
That
properly, but we'll jump to the next slide.
we'll go to the next slide because I don't know what the arrow means. Yeah, so we had 32 men and women of diverse ages, from 25 years to 86 years old, and all ethnicities. Over 80% have an income of less than 15,000 a year. So they're on social assistance, a lot of them for disability. 85% have some post-education or post-secondary education. The diagnoses range from anxiety, depression, bipolar, PTSD, mood disorder, borderline personality disorder, psychosis, and schizophrenia and anxiety. So there was a wide range of different mental health conditions. And more than 80% of the people spent at least 5 years involved with the mental health system. So they had either case manager, or they were going to Thrive, or they were involved in the system. And 80% have other health issues like addiction, brain injury, attention deficit, cancer. Some people were going through cancer treatment while they were taking part in the study.
Yeah.
And they showed some photos of their experiences of dealing with cancer and a mental illness. So, and we chose Photovoice because it's visual and it speaks to people, and it allows the participants to talk about their lived experience through pictures and kind of show their individual viewpoint of seeing the world. And you know, the pictures reflect like what's important to them, what issues they're facing, what's bothering them. And so we thought that was a good way of getting data to reflect you know, what people with mental health issues are going through and what is most important to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so the participants, you know, they're in charge of creating the knowledge they're sharing, and they learn photography skills. They learn to tell their stories and share ideas, brainstorm. They create the data. They offer critical reflection. They learn teamwork, like working with other group members, and then they're engaging in social action when they're doing public speaking or just even at the photo exhibit and talking to people about their photos. And they're influencing public policy and increasing awareness of personal and community issues as well in the community.
So just to give you a bit of context, that one slide we were missing was just a timeline of what this process looked like. So as Amanda described, we chose Photovoice as our research methodology to gather our data. And we're going to be going into detail next on what that process looked like, because we did turn that, although Photovoice is a research methodology, we were able to, out of this project, create a program curriculum that's available on our website, that it mirrors the Photovoice process that you could do as a therapeutic intervention, not necessarily as a research data collection method, but as a therapeutic intervention, because what we did find through this process of doing the Photovoice was that the feedback from the participants was that it was incredibly therapeutic, a very therapeutic process, and very empowering for people to be able to articulate things that maybe in other ways they'd never have a chance to. So You'll see on our website, and we'll share that at the end, that our Photovoice curriculum is called digital storytelling, because Photovoice is specific to the research process. But we'll get into that. So now in the next slide, we're going to talk a bit about just briefly some of the questions that we asked, and then show you some of the photos and reflections that participants shared with us.
Yeah, so like I was saying, Nicola, the other peer researcher, and I developed the Photovoice manual, and we had some questions that we wanted answered. So some of them, these aren't all of them, but the photo taking questions, like the guiding principle behind the photo, was brainstormed in the group. And so people were asked to take photos of what is your community, or are your communities, because there might be multiple communities that people belong to, and what does recovery mean to you? And then in your day-to-day life, what does community inclusion look like? What does health look like? Social isolation look like? And poverty look like? So here are some of the photos that answered those questions, along with the narrative.
So yeah, what I think we moved the slide towards the end, but what this looked like was Amanda and Nicola each had separate groups, and they would meet with participants and brainstorm the question, and how, because it's difficult, right? Those are really hard questions for one, and to think about like metaphors and to take a photo of something like this would be challenging for everyone. So we did a brainstorm first with participants, and then they had a camera and a reflection sheet that they would take out into the community for the week, and take a photo and write a guided reflection. And all of that is in our manual, free and available for anyone who's interested.
So this is a picture a participant took, and it says, "There are times when I do not feel like doing anything. Even putting a video on and vegging out in front of it, it's isolating. A lot of hours stuck at home surrounded by books and movies, but not wanting to engage in my surroundings." So there's books and movies and things to do, but he just doesn't feel like turning on a video. And
damaged heart. This is my heart with band-aids on it. All of my life I've been trapped and hiding, not trusting enough to go outside and look for opportunities. I am so exhausted and unhappy.
She has that look again. If I were having a bad day, she would knit me a sweater or socks. She is a friend who gives back to the community every day, but endures more hardship than she deserves. She has a good attitude. People need to dig deep to find their inner strength to survive and thrive no matter what life throws at you.
Climb a tree with me. Recovery doesn't happen in isolation. It is so much about relationships. People being with you on the journey and helping when you get stuck. The human connection is one of the most healing experiences when we are dealing with mental illness.
Hanging on for dear life. One lonely leaf left on the tree makes me think of survival. I am determined, the leaf says, to hang on and not to give up. In the mental health system, many of us have to go through several battles for survival.
My new home. I've lived in smaller and less inviting places. The very high rent in Vancouver is not affordable to most. When I was working, I found a nice place to live, but it is being torn down for new condos. This is Vancouver's new affordable housing. It's about as close as I'll get.
Our meal, we sort it out, take out the bad ones, throw the bad rotten veggies and fruit in the garbage, and then keep the good ones to serve to people.
Hope. This is my job. It's the beginning of changing my life. This is something I can do for people. Clean up the street so it is pleasant. My work gives me a sense of purpose.
Abandoned. The baby has been abandoned and discarded just like us. I am abandoned by society and healthcare. I have been failed by systems in society.
Glass barrier. Like a glass barrier, I feel that my invisible disability blocks me from being able to participate, to help others. Exclusion makes me feel that I have no power.
A lunatic. I used to be described as odd, someone who talked and did odd things and made people feel uncomfortable. Being an odd person made me isolated, excluded from society, robbed of my chances to get a job.
Shadow on a bench. Mental illness makes me feel like a shadow. It casts a shadow over my life. I feel stripped of identity and sense of self. Sometimes I feel like the bench, grounded and strong. Sometimes like the shadow. Shame and fear hide in the shadow.
The weakest and the strongest are connected. I am one of the links in the chain, and one link is just as important as the many links that make up the chain. We can't overlook the marginalized in our society. Say hi to people in the neighborhood. And be more interested in finding out about their lives.
A token of love. I love you has many meanings. Like knowing someone cares for you, has your best intentions, and wants you to be happy. In my community, there are people who I can talk to or just say hi. So that was a sample of, we had over 362 photos as part of the data collection that was gathered over the course of the Photovoice process. So you can imagine there was a lot of photos to go through, and very impactful process. So right now we'll get into the digital storytelling protocol that is available on our website that we'd like to share with you if this is something, and please reach out to us as well if this is something you want to try out and you have further questions beyond what we're able to provide you with in this short webinar.
Because Photovoice is considered a research methodology, we named our protocol Digital Storytelling Protocol. And Photovoice comes from Caroline Wang, and you can read about her, and she kind of invented Photovoice, but so we called ours Digital Storytelling Protocol Goal, and it's on the website. And so the goals are to provide a facilitated discussion of social issues that impact the lives of people with mental illness, and then to increase understanding of the experience of individuals living with mental illnesses for participants themselves, as well as service providers. So kind of to share insight to service providers as well as insight to themselves on what they're experiencing. and then to provide the opportunity for people with lived experience of mental health to participate in identifying midstream and upstream challenges. And so if you go to the website, imagininginclusion.ca, you can download the digital story protocol manual for free. And then, yeah, so we had weekly sessions. The first week was an introduction to the project and like what we're researching and why and who we are. And then we gave out cameras so they got to understand the mechanics of working a camera. And then we did the art of photography, like rule of thirds and how to take a good picture that's not blurry and
Or blurry if you want it to be.
yeah.
Yeah.
And then we did ethics of photo taking because you can't take people's photos and have them in an exhibit without their permission. So we practiced approaching people and asking, "Hey, I'm in a research project. Can I take your photo?" And then we did photo sharing and reflections. So over the 5 weeks, we had different research questions, and then we'd brainstorm them and talk about it in a group and how you can represent, the concept or the question in a photo and reflection. And then we edited and selected the photos. So we had, I think, 64.
Total in the end that we
in the end,
from the 362.
Yeah.
I think we brought it down to through the data. That was through the data analysis process.
Yeah. We kind of selected the photos, and then we had just an evaluation workshop, like how it went for them, if they liked it. And we had a celebration and a little party, and it was good.
So that was the formal data collection process for this project. The Photovoice, the 10-week Photovoice. So what participants came in, we had posted for the research project and had those 32 participants sign up, and they stayed through the entire 10 weeks. So at the end of this, participants, I'm just going to, see if the next slide works. No, it doesn't again. So what this slide is supposed to share is our timeline. So at the end of the 10 weeks, we're now in April of 2014, participants identified that they felt so engaged and empowered through this Photovoice process that they wanted to stay connected. So at least 17 of the 32 people, and I've been running groups for a long time in my work. I've never had a group of 32 people stay with us for so long, that was amazing. So I think that speaks a bit to the participatory process, the peer facilitators leading it. There were so many aspects of it that really felt engaging for people, and we'll talk a little bit at the end about outcomes as well. But at that point, at the end of the 10 weeks, at least 17 people articulated that they really wanted to stay involved in some way, which was wonderful for us because as part of participatory research, that's a plus for us. But we didn't have any formal plans in place at that point. So we did some brainstorming with the participants, and from there, one of the natural kind of next steps of a Photovoice project is our exhibits. So from there, we developed an exhibit working group that would be responsible for finding venues and putting together the exhibit, reaching out to different community settings to set up an exhibit and advertising those out in the community. So that was one, we called them peer task groups. So that one peer task group was ran from May 2014 to March of 2015, putting on multiple exhibits throughout the Lower Mainland here in Vancouver. We had another peer task group called the Analysis and Photo Selection Group. So that was a group of people that were deeply involved in the data analysis. And they worked, that was the longest running group because it was so much work. It was about 12 months long, where they were reading transcripts, coding, weekly, meeting 3 to 4 hours a week for a year almost. So that was a very, super interesting group for the right people. Not everyone, not all 17 people were in for data analysis, of course, but it was really neat to see how many people were interested in it. And then we had a newsletter group. So based on the themes of the analysis as it was coming through, we were writing newsletters and sending them out to the community for anyone interested. Around some of the themes that were coming up from the project and sharing some of the photos and personal stories that people wanted to share, participants wanted to share, building on kind of what they had come up with through the Photovoice process. And then the last one, which is one we're going to get into right now, was our speaker series. So for many people, using a camera to articulate their feelings and thoughts and experiences through photos was really empowering, more empowering than people expected it to be. And they felt so confident in that process that they wanted to, and felt so passionate and empowered about being able to finally kind of share their story, articulate their story. They wanted to take it a step further and actually do some public speaking about it, which was amazing to us. So we quickly wrote a program protocol, which we'll speak about in the next slide, that we called Speaker Series, and that's also on our website to share. That is, and let me talk about that in a second. So this is just a nice little visual of some of the peer task groups, and some images from our speaker series and exhibits that we had taken out into the community. So the speaker series, the purpose of it, building on people's desire to share their story further and get their message out. The purpose of it is to build public speaking skills, to formulate and develop a personal mental health journey story, to increase feelings of confidence and empowerment, and to participate in upstream health work and social change. So the weekly sessions, the first week it's kind of an overview of public speaking for mental health. What does that mean? And what does that look like? We did sessions on developing your story. So thinking through what you want to share, and how much of it do you want to share, and what does that look like for you? How to tell your story, and then public speaking skills related to skills related to public speaking, like connecting with your audience. I've been told I need to look at the camera, so I'm going to try and connect with you, audience. Spreading the word, and of course, and then presenting in the community. So in this, for this process, so we had many people take part in this, and most that had never done any public speaking in their life, which was amazing. So 6 participants in total were involved in the 8-week session leading up to Mental Health Awareness Week. Participants took part in the 8-week Writing Your Recovery Story workshop. We have a nice partnership that we were able to build on with Van City, which is a credit union here in BC. And there's an amazing woman, her name is Kristen Bauer, who's a real mental health advocate in the community, and she does a lot of public speaking. She has her own blog, and she works for Van City around, she has a new title lately, but inclusion and diversity, and she works in sort of the HR area, and she's very passionate about breaking down stigma. So we see her as a real advocate and support. And we had her come in to share how she tells her story in our public speaking in this speaker series program. And then we ended up partnering with her to host, Van City hosted, so 3 different Van City branches in the Lower Mainland here hosted a mental health day, and we were able to exhibit the photos at the branch and have a space for our participants to share their story to anyone who wanted to hear and take part. So it was open to the public and to staff at the branches. And it was really incredible. Lots of great feedback on that. And nice that it tied, I mean, it was planned, but it was nice that it tied around Mental Health Awareness Week as well.
Yeah, so the outcomes, I can, why don't you read this slide and I read that part? 'Cause
Sure.
I can't read that part.
Yes. It's a very tiny font, I'm sorry. So as we've mentioned, one of the biggest outcomes was a sense of confidence, empowerment, and inclusion for people. That social action piece really stood out to me in this process. People were really people who never normally or typically describe themselves as real advocates in the community really felt motivated through this process to talk to their neighbors, talk to people that maybe they normally wouldn't talk to about mental health and about their experience in a comfortable way. Many people moved on to other things after this and were quite motivated to engage in their community as a part of this process, even though one of the data that came through spoke to massive barriers. As you saw in some of the photos, really difficult things that people were going through, and a lot of systemic barriers that people experience in their effort to just live and try to be healthy and participate in their community. A lot of massive barriers. And we'll speak a little bit as we talk about some of the models that we created out of this, and then leading into the next project, which we'll end with. So Amanda's going to share a quote. It's a little bit longer, but just really powerful quote about one of the participants' experiences through this process.
Mm-hmm. So imagining inclusion has been a transformative experience for me, and it's helped me make some profound changes in how I live my life. Prior to discovering the project, I felt lost, disconnected from society, ashamed, and embarrassed for having a mental illness, and above all, angry. Working with the research team helped me build my confidence and strengthened my social skills. Saddled with a lifetime of failure and low self-esteem, I slowly came to realize that I could make a meaningful contribution and cultivate significant relationships. It is because of the work on the project that I no longer feel invisible or ashamed, but rather feel very strongly about finding ways to encourage conversations about mental illness and how to end stigma around this profoundly insidious and invisible condition. My world is not so small anymore. I'm active and vocal about the cause in the community through volunteer opportunities, and am slowly finding meaning and purpose in my life. I'm proud and honored to have played a small part of a larger voice that is trying to end the stigma of mental health, one photo at a time.
Yeah, we can show you more data, but we felt that quote of that participant's experience is so profound, and a lot of people articulated similar experiences. How are we doing for time?
Great.
Oh, 11:24. Okay. So one of the models that you'll see is on our website. When we were analyzing the data and going through all of these, and for anyone interested in the research side of it, our data encompassed the photos themselves and then the reflection sheets, as well as the weekly transcriptions of the session. So each week that participants, it was a lot of data. Regina is like, her brain is exploding right now. So the transcript every week, when the participants brought back their photos and their reflection sheets, those were workshopped and discussed as a group, so people could provide kind of their insight and experience related, and the person themselves could share their story and build on it.
And it was recorded on audio, and then the students transcribed from the audio recordings massive piles of data, and then the data analysis team, the Pure Task Group, went through and they highlighted keywords that kept coming up or popping up, or significant things that, like, this is important, this is important. So from that, we had a code book.
Multiple code books.
Lots of code books.
Different iterations of coding happened. And what kept coming up through the analysis process was the systems and the systemic barriers that people were experiencing. So we were looking to see what we could do with this, and we found the upstream downstream parable, which was developed back in the 70s, in 1975. And what it is, it's if you're not familiar with it, it's the image of a river, and what it speaks to is a man comes up to a river and sees someone has fallen into the river, and he immediately goes to help and pull the person out of the river, and then another person falls in, so he reaches in to help that person out, and then another person falls in, and he realizes, what is going on here? There's got to be, I can't keep pulling people out of the river. So he looks upstream and he sees what the issues are. So what it speaks to, and that's a very simplified version. We do have it is on our website in a document called "Creating Upstream Change to Address Mental Health Inequities." But what it illustrates is the tension between the public health protection mandates to respond to emergencies, so those people falling in the river, but the tension between that and its prevention and promotion efforts and mandates to help stop people from falling in the river to begin with. So people living with mental illness often are falling into the river because of the many systems and barriers that our participants articulated, and maybe more, of course. Emotional suffering, bureaucratic and stigmatizing systems. Stigma is a big one. economic insecurity and low social status. To stay afloat, what a lot of people, so you can see on the right-hand side of this image is the experiences of exclusion, and these are all direct words that participants spoke about. So these were all their experiences of exclusion. So suffering at the downstream level, emotional pain, isolation, self-stigma. At the midstream level, the systems, practices, and policies that are in place, the bureaucracy and lack of transparency. And upstream, obviously, we know stigma is a massive barrier for people, marginalization, experience of poverty and food insecurity, housing and homelessness. But people also spoke about their experiences of inclusion, thankfully, to help us better understand what did indeed help them feel included. So at the downstream level, at the bottom right of this image, you can see health and well-being is the key word. So that includes hope, personal growth, self-determination, perseverance, self-esteem, belonging, and connection. At the midstream level, systems, practices, and policies that are supportive, non-judgmental, inclusive, and welcoming, accessible, opportunities to learn and make contributions. And then at the upstream level, acceptance and real equity, inclusive, compassion, and economic security. These were all words that participants related to. So in the next slide, this is a lot. We could talk about this for an hour and a half alone. But in the next slide, what we're going to share is also something that came out of the project, which was participants, what they described and really felt compelled to define, which was their definition of what you see in the middle here, health work. So let me just go to the next slide here. Do you want to read this one, Amanda?
So yeah, health work. It's highly individualized, nonlinear, a lifelong process that includes the intentional pursuit of activities, including advocacy, seeking connections, hobbies, physical activity and recreation, therapy, volunteering, and paid work. So individuals engaging in health work with the intention to relieve suffering, manage mental illness, gain skills, establish connections, increase agency, improve quality of life, and maintain and improve health and well-being. So it's like a daily thing that you need to do. It's precarious, like sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. And it's intentional, like you have to do it every day. And there's inhibitors and enablers. So some things inhibit, like economic insecurity. You can't buy toothpaste, so you can't brush your teeth. Or stigma, mental illness. Like someone finds out you're mentally ill and makes fun of you in your friend group, and then you don't feel like going out and hanging out with your friends. Access to social services. You know, if you're mentally ill, sometimes you have to wait a long time for housing. If you need supportive housing, and your health could go down if you don't have the access to the support right away. And then suffering, emotional pain, physical suffering. And then there's enablers, so things that can kind of boost, give some power to your health work. So economic security, having a regular paycheck, you know, making a budget and stuff like that. Feeling accepted and feeling heard, having equity and some power. Supportive mental health services. So you have a good worker that listens to you. You have a psychiatrist that is compassionate and suggests medications that are acceptable to you in that work. And then opportunities to share your experience with others, like through peer support or through like facilitating RAP, Wellness Recovery Action Plan workshops, and sharing the tools that you learned that helped you recover as part of your health work, and sharing that with others, and sharing resources that you know about with other people who need them and stuff. And then connecting and belonging, not just to the mental health community and consumers, but also to, you know, your own family and friends and coworkers and stuff like that. So connection to other people is really important. And then you know, so things like work, volunteering, navigating the mental health system, accessing the resources that you need, advocating for yourself, self-care, doing the things that you need to do every day to stay well, like eat, drink, water, sleep enough, take your medication, all those, you know, daily maintenance activities from REP that people need to do. And then from doing the daily health work or the daily recoveries, there's outcomes. So you have increased sense of hope that, yes, I can stay well, and I can stay well for a long time, and I can get a job, and I can be valued by my employer and even get a raise. You know, I have a sense of purpose. Like, yeah, I work in, you know, peer workshops, and it's a good job, and I get to interact with people and teach them the things that they need to do to recover, or to share my story of recovery. You know, stable mental health and physical health is one of the outcomes. If you do the things that you need to do every day, it builds up and it gains momentum, kind of like a snowball. And then eventually you just become, I want to say weller and weller, but it's not a word. But you get better and better. Yeah, and you recover, and then you have a decrease in suffering, and you're more self-aware, and you have personal growth, you have better relationships with others and better friendships, and just your quality of life goes up. So that's what we found in the research, in the photos, and so that's kind of what our findings are.
Yeah, so that those two models were developed specifically through the project findings with the participants. And this last one really, the participants, especially the ones involved in data analysis that were so deeply embedded in that process, but others as well, really articulated that they needed to put words to the work that's involved in maintaining your health. So this was what we were able to create to put that into words and a visual. So that was sort of the end of the first project. So as I mentioned, we've mentioned the website has the models on there and a little bit more better and different description of them, and the protocols that are free for you to use. And we're happy to provide any support in walking through those if needed. Just reach out on the website. And that was 2015 when we ended the first project. So that first project was 2 years. It went from 2013 to 2015, and we took a we ended. We took a it ended up being just a year break, and we decided we really wanted to build on it, use some of the findings from this project, and to build on it. So we decided let's try again. Let's apply
Let's
again.
do another one.
So we applied to the Vancouver Foundation again. This time in partnership with Douglas and York University as well. And we called it the Upstream Change Project. And the goals for this one, pulling forward the findings from the first project, we wanted to see what ways can the Creating Upstream Change model guide down, mid, and upstream change in community mental health. So how can we start to look at some of those systemic barriers that people have identified that they experience? What kinds of change results from the co-creation and delivery of a peer leadership model? What we'll talk about next is the development of our peer researcher training, which we're very excited to share. And then the last goal was what kinds of down, mid, and upstream change result from delivering peer-led upstream interventions in the community, and which factors impede change. So those are our working questions right now. This project started in 2016 and will be going through until next year, 2019. One of the unique things about this or difference for this project is we're not just doing, well, there's a lot of things, but there's multiple layers of things that we're studying. But we are the interventions, to speak to the third goal, we are doing it a few different sites. So we did a similar Photovoice program at Thrive, at Open Door Group Thrive. And now we're just starting at the Northeast Mental Health Team here in Vancouver, which is one of our mental health teams. So we're just starting that in this month.
Yeah, February.
So from one of the first things we did in 2016 was we developed a peer research curriculum called Training Peers in Research Leadership. So one of the things that came out of the first project was the incredible value of peer researchers as part of the project. And we wanted to build on that and create a curriculum that could be shared in the community for others to use. So we developed a curriculum which was taught by our peer researchers, and we trialed it last May. Yeah,
Almost a year ago.
Yeah, a little fuzzy on the timing. So we, the purpose of it was to provide peers with intensive, relevant, and applicable training in research. Developing, expanding, and enhancing peers' research skills will build peer leadership capacity and strengthen and increase the number of peer leadership roles within the mental health system. So the outcomes: peers who complete this training will be enabled to participate equitably on research teams as collaborators or co-investigators, or may possibly conduct small-scale collaborative research studies or program evaluations. So we had 12 people in our initial training, and from that we ended up hiring two of them.
Yeah.
So this project we built, the first project we started with 2 peer researchers, and this one we've had 6 to date, which is incredible, all with different
backgrounds
and
experiences.
and skills. One of our peer researchers, we're excited, is heading to Ottawa next month to participate in the Mental Health Commission Spark training, which is specifically, I know a few people have done it, which is incredible, specifically training around knowledge translation. So we're excited to have her come back from that next month to support the project in different ways of getting our knowledge out in the community. I think we're just at the end of our presentation. We wanted to share one last slide here.
Okay.
Mainly that we wanted to share that, well, as we said, we believe that building peers' research skills will support and strengthen the mental health community. So that's one of the primary goals of this project, and has many more layers than we were able to share today of what we're currently doing. But what we did want to share, if you're interested in, to stay tuned, we will be running another peer researcher training in the fall of this year, I believe. And we'll post that on our website when that comes up, and maybe share it with Regina and the team here at PSR if anyone's interested. Please don't hesitate to get in touch with us to learn more.
Yeah, are there any questions? I think we have a couple minutes for questions. If anyone has any.
And maybe just as we do that transition, it's Regina chatting in the background. I'm just going to briefly say hello to you. How are you doing? Whoopsie daisy, not in the camera. Oh, that's a little trickiness. Just to say thanks very much for being with us. Don't you think that was just an amazing presentation? Wasn't that? It just triggered so many questions for me, and I'm just going to chat for a little minute just while you get a moment to be able to type up your questions for whomever, Amanda or Maya. So maybe as you're typing, maybe you just say I have a question for Maya or Amanda. But some things came to mind. So I think probably you know that part of my role here at Douglas is coordinating the graduate diploma in psychosocial rehabilitation, and we had a really interesting conversation last week about the notion of suffering, and so we ended up, somebody was chatting about notions of suffering, and I was saying, sometimes I have some interesting thoughts about that, because when I put it in a recovery-oriented framework, somehow just the word kind of grinds a little bit. And so interesting to hear this team today speak about how suffering was an articulated theme, I think, for some people. So that's really helpful, I think. Sometimes I think when we think about recovery, we just really want to honor people's journeys. So that was extremely helpful to me personally, and hopefully I see that we have some students on the line today. So maybe we'll end up bringing back that conversation and maybe just understanding that idea a little bit more deeply over the weeks to come in our classes. So thank you for that. Also, things that struck me were, as PSR practitioners, the competency of trying to help people, trying to support people in their inclusionary efforts in their local community. I think we often miss the mark on that as mental health teams or as people delivering services sometimes. And I just want to celebrate that partnership between academia and service providers. Maybe it just affords a different way to look at some of these issues in a more impactful way, perhaps, in a way where we're really, I think, building agency with people receiving services, perhaps. So this is my interpretation. But what I heard through really the conversation was, here we are building agency with people so that they can impact change, perhaps, or maybe, manage that self-stigma, perhaps, or maybe being able to see new possibilities for themselves. And that's the thing that really struck me through this presentation. So I know I'm rabbiting on. So, but that's really a thought that I had. And so let's go to James, who I'm sure is always, we know, extremely articulate. So maybe we'll just take his comment here, and I know he'll add to our thinking. He says, thank you very much for an illuminating presentation. I'm impressed that inclusion can happen so creatively and artfully. We should be imagining inclusion each and every day. Bravo, today's great presentation. So thanks for adding that, James. As always, super articulate. Daniel adds, I thank the ladies for their hard work in this project. Anytime I can see a project where my peers or myself can put our past to focus on the future, it is mind-blowing. I look forward to speaking with you privately. So I look forward to hearing from Daniel. Jacqueline's in the process of doing some typing as well, so we look forward to that. But yeah, I think a quote that I heard from this presentation too was just this idea of no longer feeling invisible. That struck me as so supremely powerful. It really moved me, both from the absence of visibility and then this moving into a place of visibility. And I think sometimes when we imagine these research projects, getting to that place is a hope and a dream. I think when you're putting your efforts into doing an ethics application and the drudgery of those things, but that quote really, I think, just put things in a wee box for me that provided immense hope for me personally. I'm just going to check. I think we might have some other questions coming in there. Please feel free to keep coming with your comments and your questions. We look forward to hearing from you. One of the other things that struck me too, I know I'm rabbiting on so many things, but as a qualitative researcher, I understand that it takes a year to do the analysis. And what blew me away is that we had a group of people who were interested in journeying for a year, once a week, to do that analysis. And I have multiple questions about the process of analysis and the framework that you use to make that analysis, but we'll do that offline. Because that's my research brain going on. I want to know. Yeah, but I just, as I'm chatting and rabbiting on here, I don't see any other comments coming in. Right. I don't see any other comments coming in. So maybe what we will do is I'm just going to turn the camera around to our amazing expert speakers. And I do want to just congratulate you on a personal note. What I saw was lots of interacting and lots of, clearly you're both passionate about this work. And I think the way I saw you present today showed for me just the true partnership between people, you know, on a research project, and just that sharing of knowledge and power. And, you know, you enacted what I think you talked about, and you don't always see that. That was really super cool. So anyway, that's my little Sudeep is just doing a little typing, so maybe I'll wait a tiny moment just to see that comment before just passing it over to the ladies here, in case maybe you have final comments after all of that. I didn't get Jackie's comment. Thank you. So sorry, Jackie, I missed you. Oh, look, poor Jackie. All right, sorry I missed that. Jackie says, in Manitoba, we are seeking to develop speaker series for persons with lived experience and the impact that government policy has on their lives. Do presenters have any experience with this aspect or any advice for Jacqueline? Thanks, that's a great question, Jacqueline. Thanks.
That is a good question. The impact of government policy on their lives. So the Photovoice process, the digital storytelling, definitely spoke to that. When we moved into that next, the peer task groups, we intentionally, you'll see in the protocol, you know, that we left the speaker series protocol intentionally to keep it broad and allow for people to share the story they wanted to tell. But, you know, I could see definitely a very nice parallel for people interested specifically in speaking to that. Some people did. Some people spoke incredibly personally about their personal story and what things have impacted them positively and negatively over the course of their journey, whether it was government policy or not. So have a look at the protocol and feel free to get in touch with either one of us, and hopefully we can, troubleshoot with you in terms of the specifics of what you're hoping to share. But I think for us, it definitely important, was that the presenters shared what they felt they were able and wanting to share in the spaces that some people didn't want to speak at Van City, but wanted to speak in other settings. So I think all of that is something to think about when planning a speaker series.
Yeah, you could always do brainstorming with the group on like how services have helped them and how services have hindered them. Because, sometimes policy, it takes a while to get, like disability payments or housing or whatever. And that's just my pill alarm going off. Sorry, it's noon. I need to take a pill.
Yeah, health and wellness.
Yeah, so you just brainstorm activities related to social policy and like their experiences. I remember walking into like the welfare office for the first time, and there was a big like a plexiglass screen, and I like a divider almost, and it kind of made me feel like separate, like I was dangerous or I was excluded. And yeah, so you can just even talk about how the offices are set up to exclude people. They do have these desks that raise up, like they're remote controlled or something, and like if the worker doesn't want to talk to you, she just raises her desk up.
Wow.
Yeah. And that's not really, it's a barrier. It's like, hey, I've been waiting in line for an hour and you just move your desktop. Like, it just pisses people off. Yeah, so talk about that. Like, what is it like when you go to the office? What are the workers like? What helps you? What hinders you? Like, how do they talk to you? Like, are there brochures that are helpful, or are they confusing, or are there like is there a resource guide, or is there nothing in the office? Yeah.
So yeah, thanks for touching on that, Amanda. You just reminded me the digital storytelling protocol has a few brainstorming activity worksheets that Amanda and Nicola had created and found through different research around how to brainstorm and workshop those bigger concepts that might be difficult, but so many people could speak to them. Like that's a perfect example of a massive barrier. But those workshops might also be helpful for the speakers series as well, if you're not going to do both, which there is not necessary. Yeah.
So I think we're at 12 o'clock, and I'm sure there are many people on the line who need to go to lunch. I know some of you are in Manitoba, so lunch is all done. But thanks so much. I actually really appreciate too Amanda's little alarm going off, because I think it helps to remind us that, personal health and wellness really relates to people being happy in their communities as well. So that, it is our responsibility to help people stay well, and that if there's something that we can do to contribute that, I think that's what we try to do, isn't it? So thanks for just such a rich conversation this morning. I think we had